Hello, this is Dr. Grande. Today's question is, can I analyze the case of Jimmy Savile? His case was featured in the 2022 Netflix documentary titled Jimmy Savile, A British Horror Story. Just a reminder, I'm not diagnosing anybody in this video, only speculating about what could be happening in a situation like this. If you enjoyed this video, please like it, subscribe to my channel, and consider supporting me on Patreon. I will put the link to Patreon in the description for this video. First, I'll look at the background of this case, then I'll move to my analysis. Jimmy Savile was born in Leeds, England on October 31, 1926. His father was named Vincent and his mother, Agnes. Jimmy was the youngest of 7 siblings. His family was Roman Catholic. Jimmy remained Catholic for his entire life. At age 14, Jimmy dropped out of school and worked in an office. During World War II, he was conscripted to work in a coal mine. He sustained a spinal injury during a controlled explosion. It took him 3 years to recover. In the early 1940s, Jimmy would play records in dance halls. He claimed to be the first DJ in history. He was also active in racing bicycles and worked as a professional wrestler. In 1958, he started working as a radio DJ. Over the next several years, he became quite popular. In 1960, he landed his first television role. He was a presenter on a music program. He would go on to work on several shows throughout his long career, including one called Jim'll Fix It, which ran for 19 years starting in 1975. So he made his name a contraction, JIM''LL. Jimmy volunteered in a few hospitals and became known for raising money to help them. Throughout his career, he raised about £40 million for charity. Jimmy became a celebrity in Britain. He had relationships with a number of high-profile figures like Margaret Thatcher and several members of the royal family, including Prince Charles, Diana, Princess of Wales, and Prince Philip. Jimmy was even given a knighthood. He appeared to have a particularly close relationship with Prince Charles. Letters indicated that Charles asked Jimmy for advice on public relations. This is like looking for advice on interviewing from Prince Andrew or advice on anger management from Will Smith. Throughout his life, a number of rumors started surfacing about Jimmy Savile. People came forward and said that he had offended in a sexual manner against underage individuals, both male and female. Some of Jimmy's atypical activities appeared to support the allegations. For example, he regularly visited a school for juvenile female offenders and would occasionally take the students out in his Rolls Royce. Many people came to suspect that Jimmy was a criminal. Several reporters made attempts to uncover the truth about his activity, but witnesses would become afraid and stop cooperating. An allegation was made against Jimmy in 2007, but there was not enough evidence to file charges. Another complaint was filed in 2008, but the same thing happened. Jimmy threatened legal action against people who complained against him. He even filed a lawsuit against a newspaper which mentioned several alleged criminal offenses. After a long period of illness, Jimmy Savile died on October 29, 2011, just 2 days before he would have turned 85. Immediately after his death, a number of new allegations were made against him. People felt more comfortable about recounting his offenses. Even though Jimmy was dead and there were no more concerns about lawsuits, the media in Britain was reluctant to broadcast reports of these allegations. Jimmy was a well-liked figure by many. Eventually, as hundreds of witnesses came forward, the information was broadcast. The time range of the alleged offenses was from 1955 to 2009, although much of the behavior occurred during the 1960s and 1970s. At the time they were allegedly victimized, the ages of the complainants ranged from 8 to 47. In response to the large quantity of accusations, an effort was made in Britain to eliminate Jimmy Savile's name from public spaces. The headstone at his grave was removed and destroyed. A conference center and a sidewalk bearing his name were renamed. Many of his honors were revoked, including 2 honorary doctorates. Television shows featuring Jimmy were no longer broadcast, and his charities were closed, with the money being redistributed to other charities. Now moving to my analysis. Jimmy Savile has become an example of how a person with wealth, fame, and charisma can get away with criminal behavior. Many people were shocked by the allegations against him, but others knew that something was going on. Again, rumors were spread about Jimmy over the course of many years. It's worth noting that Jimmy Savile was never convicted of any crime. Despite his presumption of innocence, many people presume he is guilty due to the sheer quantity of complaints, some of which occurred during his lifetime. I think it is reasonable to consider him guilty in light of the available evidence, but if he ever returned from the dead, he does have the presumption of innocence. I will go through several of the items that stood out to me in the case of Jimmy Savile. Item number 1, Jimmy had an unusual persona. He was thought of as eccentric. He would frequently wear brightly colored tracksuits, unusual glasses, and his mannerisms were bizarre. Despite his strange behavior, many considered him to be trustworthy because they reasoned that he was simply playing a character. People viewed the real Jimmy as charismatic, warm, empathic, witty, and courageous. Item number 2, Jimmy frequently made statements about how he would chase women and how women complained about his advances. He was brash, crude, and self-centered. It became kind of a running joke, almost his trademark. He was like the television personality version of Pepe Le Pew. He went out of his way to appear creepy, dark, and untrustworthy. Jimmy claimed to have a number of short-term romantic relationships with women, but reporters could not find even one woman who had a relationship with him. There is the sense that Jimmy was trying to communicate to people how he was a criminal. He knew he could get away with the crimes, but he wanted more. He wanted people to accept him as he was. He may have also wanted to shock them with his true nature. I think Jimmy used this strategy of appearing creepy for two main reasons. Number 1, by representing himself as overly flirtatious and assertive, he was getting ahead of any criticism. He was trying to beat accusers to the punch. Number 2, he was creating an explanation for any complaints. That is, he could say that people would see his public persona, think he was creepy, then fabricate complaints based on his image. Jimmy had developed a way to invalidate his accusers by suggesting they were simply confusing him with his persona. He found a way to separate himself from his persona. The persona would take all the heat, while Jimmy himself would be blameless. Jimmy may have appeared to be reckless and irresponsible regarding how he managed his image, but I think it was a carefully selected strategy. Item number 3, several employees at various hospitals where Jimmy volunteered or visited made a number of statements about him after his death. For example, he was a psychopath, he had a severe personality disorder, he should have been in prison, and they reported him for improper conduct when he was at the hospitals, but the reports were disregarded. Jimmy's behavior at the hospitals was pretty obvious, but those establishments were dependent on his charity. They needed him, and they were willing to contend with his inappropriate criminal behavior. Jimmy had charitable dealings with over 50 hospitals, so he could keep bouncing from one to the other and continue committing offenses. Item number 4, Jimmy had an aggressive attorney and would regularly hang out with law enforcement officials. Jimmy was able to dispose of all the complaints which were made against him. Any accuser who considered pressing the issue could be assured that whatever they did wrong in their life would come out in a trial. Item number 5, when watching interviews with Jimmy, he appeared to have a high level of cognitive empathy. That is, he understood how people were feeling, but he did not acknowledge those feelings. So his affective empathy was low. For example, he didn't laugh at other people's jokes, he never validated their concerns, and he ignored indications that other people were uncomfortable with him. Jimmy appeared to be highly narcissistic and manipulative. He was evasive and sarcastic, but it wasn't always clear if he was being sarcastic or not in any particular moment. It's like he was trying to create a little bit of a mystery. Was he telling the truth, or was he being deceptive? Item number 6, one element of Jimmy Savile that is difficult to reconcile is how he was at times generous and helpful, and at other times antisocial and destructive. Why did he maintain this dichotomy? Why did he include both the good and the bad? There are two main theories here. The first one, which was mentioned in the Netflix documentary, is that Jimmy was trying to balance his bad deeds with his good deeds so he could gain entrance into heaven. The second theory is that his charitable work was to cover for his bad deeds. I think both theories are true. Jimmy enjoyed being a criminal, but he needed to reconcile that with his faith. Therefore, he came up with this plan to do enough good to cancel out the bad. In addition, Jimmy understood that being active with the charities made him bulletproof. He knew that people would not risk aggravating him and losing his favor. Now moving to the personality factors in this case. Jimmy had an unusually close relationship with his mother. Perhaps he was overly attached. For example, when she died, he sat with her body for 5 days. It appears as though he believed he could communicate with her after death. Jimmy was unable or unwilling to form relationships with women, yet he claimed he had hundreds of these relationships. This became an important part of his public persona. He wanted people to believe that he was desirable and attractive. Jimmy was willing to take credit for helping some people while seriously harming others. He may have struggled with this dichotomy, but he continued committing offenses. It appears as though Jimmy had grandiose narcissism. He was confident, dominant, optimistic, arrogant, charismatic, and grandiose. He had a need for admiration, a sense of entitlement, and a lack of affective empathy, although, as I mentioned, he did have a high level of cognitive empathy. In addition, Jimmy had many characteristics of Factor 1 psychopathy. He was a pathological liar, manipulative, had superficial charm, and failed to accept responsibility. Looking at the 5-factor model, Jimmy had high openness to experience. He was creative and non-traditional, mid-range conscientiousness, extremely high extroversion. He was sensation-seeking, talkative, and outgoing, low agreeableness, although he wanted to appear agreeable, and he had low neuroticism, except he did have difficulty resisting temptation. Now moving to my final thoughts. One of the most efficient ways to build trust is through having a personal relationship with someone, to understand their background, to understand their values, to appreciate their life experiences and goals. Jimmy Savile won the trust of millions of people, but not for any reason based on an interpersonal relationship. Ironically, he built trust by adopting the persona of an inappropriately assertive, ultra-charismatic, creepy guy. It was the worst possible disguise, which unexpectedly offered him complete protection as he developed a horrible and prolific criminal career. Those are my thoughts on the case of Jimmy Savile. Please put any opinions and thoughts in the comment section. They always generate an interesting dialogue. As always, I hope you found my analysis of this topic to be informative. Thanks for watching.